There's this very specific type of exhaustion that I feel like we just rarely talk about out
Oh,
loud.
absolutely. It's a very quiet thing.
Right. It's this quiet, incredibly heavy fatigue.
Yeah.
And honestly, I am talking directly to you right now. Yes, you, the listener,
Yeah.
because I heavily suspect you know exactly what I mean by this.
They definitely do.
Just like picture this scenario for a second.
Yeah.
You are pouring this absolute endless tide of effort into a really vital ambition. Maybe you're, I don't know, striving to build a meaningful project entirely from the ground up.
Or maybe seeking a really profound personal connection.
Exactly. Like a relationship that actually truly resonates with who you fundamentally are. Or maybe you're just working tirelessly through the entirety of the cycle simply to elevate your overall circumstances. You just want to create a baseline of peace.
Just trying to get to neutral. Yeah.
Yeah, just neutral. And you're doing all the quote-unquote right things. You're making the sacrifices. You're, waking up before the dawn, and you are grinding with this sheer magnitude of willpower that should, by every single logical metric we're ever taught, basically guarantee a successful outcome.
But it doesn't.
It doesn't. The reality you are experiencing remains completely, utterly stagnant. It feels exactly as though you are pushing your entire body weight against this invisible, totally impenetrable wall.
That is the perfect way to describe it.
And the reality you so desperately desire simply refuses to materialize. So you're left standing there completely bewildered, basically asking the void around you, like, what on earth am I actually doing wrong here?
Well, it really is the absolute definition of a silent crisis. That sensation you're describing, the feeling of running this exhausting race but you're stuck in waist-deep water, it's incredibly common.
It's everywhere.
It really is. Yet we almost never correctly diagnose the actual cause. You're out here exerting this immense intensity of physical and mental energy, but your forward momentum is just, well, it's completely non-existent.
Right, which just leads to massive burnout.
Exactly. And the frustration of that invisible wall is not a sign that you are simply unlucky or, that the universe has randomly singled you out to endure this relentless struggle.
Though that definitely feels that way sometimes.
Oh, it absolutely feels personal. But rather, it is a profound indicator of a severe blockage in what we can refer to as the universal game of circulation.
The universal game of circulation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because when we begin to really look closely at the underlying architecture of how reality actually functions, we start to realize that the acts of giving and receiving, of effort and reward, they are not separate, isolated events at all.
Wait, they aren't, because we definitely treat them like they are.
We do, but they're not. They are entirely woven together as a singular, continuous flow of energy. So when you hit that invisible wall, when your sheer willpower completely fails to move the needle, it is almost always because there is a massive, massive disruption in your personal energetic circulation.
Okay, I'm really trying to wrap my head around this, because I think an overwhelming majority of people operate under the strict assumption that effort just automatically equals reward.
Yes, the transactional mindset.
Right. We are essentially trained from childhood to treat reality like this oversized vending machine. You put the token of hard work into the slot, you press the button, and boom, your desired outcome just drops into the tray at the bottom.
And if it doesn't drop, you just shake the machine.
Exactly. You just work harder. You shake the heavy machine. But you are suggesting that this mechanistic view is just fundamentally flawed. You're saying we're actually participating in a continuous flowing system.
A completely interconnected system, yes.
And if the pipes of that system are clogged, it really does not matter how much sheer force you try to push through the machinery. It's just not going to work.
It will only exhaust you.
So I guess in our time together today, our mission for this whole exploration is to totally abandon that surface level advice. We're going to walk away from all those generic platitudes about just working harder or, wishing for things.
We have to. It's the only way to actually understand the mechanics.
Right. We're going to examine the actual hidden mechanics of how our internal mental states solidify into external physical reality. Because if we can understand the physics of this continuous flow, maybe we can finally, stop bruising our shoulders against that invisible wall.
That is exactly the goal.
Huh.
But to understand that architectural mechanic, we first have to completely radically redefine what we even consider reality to be.
Oh, wow. Okay, starting small then.
I mean, we really have to go to the foundation. Humanity has this deeply ingrained tendency to view the physical world, the structures we inhabit, the resources we gather, the everyday circumstances we navigate, as something entirely rigid, like it's
Oh, yeah. I
fixed.
mean, if I knock on a wooden table, it feels pretty fixed.
Right. We view matter as an unyielding absolute. But when we actually examine the true nature of existence, we find that everything in our physical reality, before it ever exists as a tangible object or an observable event, it first exists vibrationally.
Vibrationally.
Yes, it begins purely as an energy signature. Matter, at its most microscopic absolute foundational level, is really nothing more than a dense precipitate of consciousness.
Wait, hang on. A dense precipitate of consciousness?
That's right.
That is a staggering concept to just casually drop on the table. Are you actually saying that the physical world, like the chair I'm currently sitting in or the literal bank account balance I look at on my phone, is essentially just an illusion created by my thoughts? Because, I mean, that sounds like the kind of esoteric theory that completely ignores the very real, very heavy physical limitations that people deal with every single day.
I completely understand why it sounds that way, but I am absolutely not suggesting it is an illusion in the sense that it is fake or imaginary or that it doesn't hurt when you stub your toe.
Okay, good. Because toes definitely hurt.
They do. It is very real. But it is a reflection. It is a materialization of something that was previously invisible. To actually grasp the mechanics of this, I want you to consider the natural cycle of water in our planetary environment.
Okay, the water cycle, like from grade school.
Exactly. Think of consciousness and human imagination as being very much like steam.
Steam, okay.
Steam is expansive, right?
Yeah.
It's formless, it floats freely through the air, and it is entirely physically impossible to grasp with your bare hands.
Yeah, you try to grab it and your hand just goes right through.
Exactly. You cannot hold steam or force it into a rigid shape. But as the atmospheric conditions change, as the actual vibration of those airborne molecules alters and cools, that steam begins to condense.
It gathers together.
Yes, it gathers into a dense cloud. And eventually, as the energetic state shifts even further down, it precipitates. It falls as heavy rain, or it solidifies entirely into a block of ice.
Wow, okay, I see where you're going with this.
The physical world that we interact with, the circumstances we currently find ourselves bound by, they are, metaphorically speaking, just frozen energy.
Frozen energy.
Yes. It is steam that has slowed its vibration down to the absolute point where it becomes touchable, heavy, and seemingly permanent.
Okay, that actually makes an incredible amount of sense. So when we are out there exhausting ourselves, trying to force a change in our physical circumstances, like when we are deeply frustrated that our project isn't succeeding or that our resources are completely depleted, we are basically standing there yelling at a solid block of ice.
Yes, you are yelling at the ice.
And we're trying to chisel away at it with our bare hands. And the harder we hit it, the more we just hurt ourselves.
Precisely. You cannot permanently alter the shape of the ice by simply chipping at it. You just end up tired and bruised.
But what we actually need to do is change the atmospheric temperature of the room.
Exactly. You must change the environmental conditions that allowed it to freeze in that exact shape in the first place. You have to alter the frequency.
Oh, man. It's like, okay, tell me if this analogy works. It's like trying to listen to a smooth, calming jazz broadcast, but your radio receiver is permanently locked onto this static-filled, aggressive rock station.
That is a phenomenal analogy. Yes.
You can't simply yell at the radio to play a different genre, right?
Yeah.
You can't exert physical willpower on the speaker cones to force the actual sound to change.
No, because the speaker cones are just reflecting the signal they're receiving.
Right. The jazz broadcast already exists. It's currently floating through the airwaves of the room as an invisible frequency. But your receiver is completely, stubbornly misaligned.
So what do you have to do?
To change your physical experience of the music, you literally have to physically reach out and turn the internal dial of the receiver to match the invisible frequency that is already present in the ether.
You have to tune the dial. That is the precise mechanism. The reality you want, the success, the profound peace, the connection, it already exists as a potential frequency. It is floating right there in the room, but your personal receiver is tuned to the wrong station.
Okay, this paints a very clear picture, but this brings up a massive, massive question.
I think I know what it is.
If our reality is just a solidified frequency, and we agree that we need to turn the dial, what is the actual mechanism that turns it? Like, what is the engine here? Because there is this very prevalent idea out there, especially in modern self-help spaces, that simply thinking positive thoughts is the ultimate key to creating reality. You know the phrase, thoughts become things?
I do. And that profound misunderstanding is exactly why there is a vast constellation of people feeling incredibly frustrated and entirely deeply burned out.
Because they're just thinking really hard.
Exactly. They are sitting in quiet rooms thinking the quote-unquote right thoughts, visualizing their desired outcomes with this intense mental focus, and absolutely nothing in their physical reality changes.
Nothing at all.
And they are frustrated because they are only utilizing a mere fragment of their actual biological and energetic power. The fundamental misunderstanding lies in confusing the role of the brain with the role of the heart.
The brain versus the heart. Okay, break that down for me.
So the brain functions essentially as the body's operating system. It utilizes solitary sparks of electricity to send signals and process logic. Every single time you construct a thought, a tiny electrical impulse fires across your internal pathway.
Great. Synapses firing.
Yeah.
Electricity.
Exactly. But while thoughts are electrical, emotions are entirely magnetic. The heart operates as a vast, incredibly powerful magnetic field.
Okay, wait. So the brain is electrical, but the heart is magnetic. And I guess together they form an electromagnetic field.
Precisely. They work in tandem, but they have very different jobs.
But surely the brain is the more powerful organ when it comes to actively shaping our lives.
Yeah.
I mean, we spend our entire existence cultivating the intellect. We go to school for it. We read books for it.
We do cultivate the intellect heavily, but when we look at the pure physics of these organs, the magnitude of the heart's electromagnetic output is immensely greater than that of the brain.
Immensely greater.
It's not even close. The heart's magnetic field completely dwarfs the brain's electrical field. Emotion, at its absolute core, is energy in motion. It is the heavy, intense gravitational fuel that actually pulls the fabric of reality toward you.
So what is a thought then, if it's not pulling the reality?
A thought is merely a directional blueprint. It points the ship in a specific direction. It determines the coordinates. But emotion, the magnetic pull, is the roaring wind in the sails that actually propels the vessel across the water.
Okay, I have to challenge this a little bit.
Please do.
Because this flies in the face of literally everything we are taught about how to survive in the modern world. From the time we are incredibly young, we are instructed that logic, intellect, and rational planning are the ultimate drivers of human progress.
We idolize the rational mind.
We really do. We are constantly warned to keep our messy, unpredictable emotions entirely out of our decision-making processes. So if the brain is this grand, sophisticated architect of our lives, why is it practically powerless to manifest reality without the heart's magnetic field?
Because, as I said, the intellect builds the vessel, but it lacks the raw kinetic energy to make it move.
It's just a blueprint.
A brilliant thought devoid of emotional resonance is entirely inert in the physical universe. Think of it this way. You can draft the most spectacular, logically sound, utterly flawless blueprint for a towering skyscraper. You can know the exact dimensions of every steel beam. You can calculate the precise mixture of the concrete. But if you do not have the heavy machinery, the raw, roaring, kinetic energy to actually move the earth, to lift the heavy steel and pour the foundation, that brilliant blueprint will just remain a flat piece of paper forever.
It just sits on the desk.
Exactly. The brain provides the vital architecture of your desire. It articulates the electrical signal. It says, I want to build this specific enterprise, or I want to attract this precise type of harmony into my life.
But the universe doesn't care about the blueprint.
No, the universe does not respond to the blueprint itself. It responds to the gravity of the emotion attached to it.
So the universe is basically blind to the logic. It only feels the pull.
The universe magnifies and maintains the dominant emotional frequency you are actively broadcasting. That's the rule.
So if my intellect is constructing these, thoughts of boundless success, I'm doing the visualizations, I'm thinking about the skyscraper, but my heart is completely engulfed in a dense emotional frequency of fear.
Or chronic anxiety, or an unyielding sense of unworthiness.
Right. If I'm feeling that dread, then the massive magnetic pull of that fear is going to overwhelmingly overpower the tiny electrical spark of the ambitious thought.
Completely overpower it. You are essentially sending a microscopic signal of desire wrapped in a massive, heavy blanket of dread. And the universe mirrors the dread, because the dread is the dominant magnetic force.
Wow. That makes an uncomfortable amount of sense.
It usually does when people first realize it.
It completely explains why someone can stand in front of a mirror and recite positive affirmations 1,000 times a day.
Mhm.
They are firing those electrical thoughts of wealth or perfect health over and
I
over.
am successful. I am successful.
Exactly. But if deep down in the very center of their chest, they feel like a total fraud, the universe only hears the feeling. The universe only responds to the magnetism of the fraudulence.
It matches the true frequency, not the spoken word.
So if our emotional resonance is the true magnet of reality, we have to look really, really closely at our hidden emotional landscapes. If our feelings dictate our frequency, what is causing our receiver to be tuned to that static-filled rock station in the first place?
Well, to understand that, we must confront one of the most pervasive, stubborn illusions of the human condition.
Which is
The illusion of compartmentalization.
compartmentalization,
Yeah.
like putting things in boxes.
Exactly. We have this profound, almost desperate tendency to believe that we can neatly box up our lives. We treat our internal landscape like a large chest of drawers.
Oh, I definitely do this.
We all do. We believe we can take an unresolved trauma, say, from a past relationship, place it into the bottom drawer, close it tightly, lock it away, and then open the top drawer labeled professional ambition and expect it to be completely pristine.
Right. We expect the ambition drawer to be totally sterile and unaffected by the mess in the bottom drawer.
But observation of our underlying nature reveals that the human mind operates as an entirely integrated, fluid ecosystem. Absolutely nothing is compartmentalized.
It's like trying to pour a heavy drop of dark, indelible ink into a clear glass of water and demanding that it politely stay confined to the bottom left corner.
That's a beautiful way to visualize it. It
Yeah.
simply doesn't work that way.
No, the exact moment the ink makes contact with the water, it begins to diffuse. It slowly, inevitably bleeds outward until it colors the entire volume of the glass.
And yet we walk around believing we have these watertight bulkheads in our minds.
Yeah, like compartments on a submarine, where if one section floods with anxiety or grief, we think we can just spin the wheel, seal the heavy steel door, and keep the rest of the ship perfectly dry and operational.
But if our subconscious is completely fluid, like the water in the glass, that ink is everywhere.
It's in the whole system.
Yes. That analogy of the ink and water perfectly captures the silent mechanics of our internal state. The fluid nature of the subconscious means that an emotional pattern formed in one seemingly isolated area of your existence instantly and constantly echoes across all others,
Even if we don't realize it.
often in ways you are completely blind to. Let us trace a hypothetical yet universally common scenario to really ground this mechanism.
Let's do.
Imagine an individual who is fiercely driven. They desire to achieve boundless prosperity in their chosen field. They are putting in the exhaustive hours, they are strategizing flawlessly, and their intellect has drawn up a magnificent blueprint for success.
Okay, they've got the electrical thought part down.
Perfectly. But perhaps due to a series of betrayals in their distant past, they harbor a deep, unconscious, simmering suspicion of other people. They fundamentally believe that humanity is dangerous and untrustworthy.
Right, so they have that bottom drawer labeled trust issues that they just assume only applies to their romantic endeavors or maybe their personal friendships. They think they can leave that drawer locked at home while they go to the office.
Exactly. They believe it is safely contained. But because the internal ecosystem is totally fluid, that exact energetic signature of deep distrust, that dark, heavy ink bleeds directly into their professional ambitions.
So how does that manifest physically?
Well, when a remarkably lucrative, highly collaborative opportunity presents itself in their career, their dominant magnetic frequency of suspicion unconsciously goes to work repelling the partnership.
Oh, wow.
The intellect might scramble to find a seemingly logical excuse to decline the deal, convincing them the timing isn't right or the terms are slightly off.
Or they just self-sabotage the meeting.
Yes. Their guarded, tense physical demeanor might subtly broadcast danger, making the other party instinctively back away. They are silently, magnetically repelling the very prosperity their intellect is working so hard to attract.
And they probably do this entirely unaware, right?
Completely unaware, keeping themselves securely trapped beneath an invisible ceiling of their own making. The surrounding reality is simply taking their dominant frequency distrust and utilizing the people, conditions, and events in their professional sphere to maintain and magnify that exact frequency.
Man. So an emotional block anywhere is essentially an emotional block everywhere.
Everywhere.
You cannot maintain a closed, fiercely defensive posture in your personal life and somehow expect to have an open, fluid, receptive posture in your financial or creative life. The universe doesn't recognize the labels on the drawers.
It doesn't read the labels. It just reads the overall color of the water in the glass.
And if we connect this fluidity to the broader concept of the universal game of circulation
Yeah.
that we discussed earlier, it stands to reason that the most common, most devastating blocks must occur in most fundamental interactions we have with the flow of energy.
That is the absolute core of the issue. The entirety of existence operates on a continuous, unbroken loop of giving and receiving. That is the fundamental circulation of energy.
Giving and receiving, the inhale and the exhale.
Precisely. But because of these unhealed, bleeding emotional patterns, this pervasive dark ink of fear and unworthiness, humanity has developed immense, almost universally shared blockages in both of these foundational acts.
So where do we start unraveling this?
We must first examine the tension present in the initial half of the cycle, the underlying physics of giving.
Okay, let's look closely at that, because I think a vast, vast majority of people generally view giving as a moral imperative. It is categorized as a philosophical virtue, you know, something you do simply to be a quote-unquote good person in the eyes of society.
Yes, it's very heavily moralized.
Right. But we rarely, if ever, actually examine the physical and energetic mechanics behind it, or the hidden psychological barriers that create so much immense friction when we are asked to part with our resources. Why is it so incredibly difficult for us to just let energy flow outward?
The primary reason individuals fail to give freely is that they are operating from a deeply entrenched primal survival mindset.
Survival, like
Yeah.
evolutionary survival.
Exactly. They view life, fundamentally, as a zero-sum game, a strict win-lose equation where resources are finite and constantly under threat.
Meaning, if you have a slice of the pie, that's one less slice for me.
Yes. When you are trapped in a survival frequency, the act of giving is instantly perceived by the nervous system as a direct threat to your own continuity. If I possess a vital resource and I give a portion of it to you, my primitive architecture registers that I now have less.
And less means danger.
It means I have experienced a tangible loss, and my probability of survival has decreased. This instinct is rooted deep within the most ancient hardware of our biology. The mechanisms designed solely to keep the physical body alive against the immediate external threats of a harsh environment.
It is that deeply ingrained scarcity mentality, the terrifying, lingering fear that there will simply not be enough for tomorrow if I let go of anything today.
It is a powerful fear.
But, I mean, we are not running from predators in the wild anymore. We are trying to manifest complex, beautiful, sophisticated realities, and yet we are trying to run a vast quantum universe using the outdated software of a cave dweller.
That is a brilliant way to put it. We are running old software. And when we cling tightly to our resources, whether that resource is financial capital, our precious time, our emotional bandwidth, or even just a simple expression of kindness, we are actively broadcasting a massive, incredibly dense magnetic frequency of absolute scarcity.
We're basically shouting to the universe that we don't have enough.
We are projecting an energetic signal to the surrounding environment that says, there is not enough, I am in constant danger of running out, and I must fiercely hoard what little I have.
And what does the universe do with that signal?
The universe, acting as the ultimate flawless mirror of our dominant frequency, simply reflects that exact poverty right back into our experience. It maintains and solidifies our state of lack.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go right ahead.
Because I know someone listening is feeling a wave of very real, very physical anxiety right now. Let's ground this in a harsh, practical reality. If I'm genuinely struggling, if my bank account is hovering near zero, and I see someone else in need, and I hesitate to give them my last resource because I genuinely need to pay for my own shelter.
Yes.
You're saying I am not just logically preserving my safety. You are suggesting that by holding on, I am energetically starving myself. How does that make any sense? If I give away my rent money, the physical reality is that I'm going to be evicted. How does the physics of abundance help me when the very real consequences of the physical world come knocking?
It is entirely counterintuitive to the primitive physical survival instinct, which is exactly why it requires such a profound shift in perspective. To comprehend why hoarding energetically starves you, you must realize that at a foundational level of reality, the concept of separation is a persistent illusion.
Separation is an illusion.
Yes. The idea that you and I, or you and the individual struggling on the street, are entirely disconnected, autonomous entities competing for finite resources. That is a trick played by the limitations of our physical senses.
Right, because we are confined to these dense physical bodies. We naturally assume that our existence completely stops at the outer edge of our skin.
We do assume that. But when you look beyond the visible spectrum, when you delve into the actual mechanics of universal interconnectedness, a remarkably different architecture emerges. Consider the phenomenon observed in the study of subatomic particles.
Okay, getting into the quantum level.
Just briefly, to illustrate the point. When two particles become entangled, they share a profound, invisible, unbreakable connection. You can separate those particles by a vast cosmic expanse, placing them at opposite ends of the known universe.
Right.
And yet an energetic shift in the state of one is instantaneously reflected in the state of the other. The distance between them and the physical separation we perceive becomes entirely irrelevant.
They are completely connected, regardless of distance.
Exactly, and this physical principle perfectly mirrors ancient observations of consciousness. We are all fundamentally varying expressions of the exact same underlying source. We are different, individualized droplets suspended in the exact same ocean.
I'm really starting to see the architecture here.
Yeah.
It's almost as if we are all different colored glass bottles, like red, blue, green, yellow, scattered randomly across a large table, but we are all filled to the absolute brim with the exact same water.
Yes.
The illusion of separation is just the colored glass, but the fundamental truth of our existence is the water inside.
That is a stunning analogy, yes.
Hmm.
Therefore, when you perceive another person as entirely separate from you, and you view the act of giving to them as a definitive loss to yourself, you are remaining trapped in the illusion of the colored glass.
You're obsessed with the bottle, not the water.
Exactly. You are actively reinforcing the magnetic frequency of separation, isolation, and poverty. You are telling the universe that the water is divided and running dry, but when you give to another, you are literally distributing resources to another physical manifestation of the exact same consciousness.
You are elevating the water level in the entire interconnected system.
By giving freely, despite that primitive fear, you transcend the ancient survival software. You step out of the illusion of separation and broadcast a profound frequency of supreme abundance. You declare to the energetic fabric of reality, I am so secure, I am connected to such an endless tide of universal resources that I can let this flow outward without the slightest fear of depletion.
And reality has to match that.
Reality, bound by its own physics of resonance, must match and materialize that declaration of absolute security.
Wow. That completely shifts the entire paradigm of charity or generosity or even just simple kindness. It's no longer about being a noble martyr or making a painful sacrifice. It is actually the ultimate act of aligning with the true architecture of reality. You give to maintain the flow.
You give to keep the circulation alive.
But, okay, there is an entirely different side to this coin. Hoarding and being stingy is a well-known, highly criticized flaw. Society constantly warns us not to be greedy, but there is an equally destructive blockage on the exact opposite side of this continuous cycle, one that society actually praises and encourages.
Yes, there is.
Because you cannot exhale forever. Eventually, the physics of the cycle demands that you inhale. We have to examine the profound, widespread inability to receive.
This is perhaps the most deeply hidden, insidious blockage in the entire human experience. The inability to receive is just as detrimental both mathematically and energetically as the inability to give.
It stops the flow just as fast.
If the universal circulation is a perfect continuous circle, severing the path of reception stops the entire mechanism just as swiftly and completely as stopping the outflow. And your observation is incredibly accurate. Our cultural conditioning has trained us to view a reluctance to receive as a high virtue.
Oh, absolutely. We are taught that to refuse assistance, to turn down a generous gift, or to constantly minimize our own desires and needs is somehow the definition of being polite or humble or gracious.
It is rampant in our society.
We wear our refusal to receive like a shining badge of honor. It is this bizarre, low-level martyr complex we all develop. We think we are being incredibly noble by asking for nothing, by insisting we require zero maintenance. Oh, I'm fine, I don't need anything.
But when you strip away that thin veneer of false humility, a much darker, heavier internal reality is revealed. The chronic inability to receive almost always stems from a profound, deep-seated lack of self-worth.
Self-worth.
Yes, it is the manifestation of an unconscious, heavily ingrained belief that you are simply not valuable enough to be the recipient of universal energy, time, or abundance.
I really want to unpack the mechanics of this because it is so incredibly pervasive. Think about a scenario as mundane as being offered a simple glass of water.
Imagine you have endured an exhausting day. You are parched, your throat is completely dry, and you walk into an acquaintance's home. They immediately notice your fatigue, and they offer you a simple, cool, refreshing glass of water.
A very common interaction.
And what is the immediate automatic knee-jerk reaction for so many of us? Oh, no thank you, I'm fine, please don't go to any trouble. You are literally, physically experiencing thirst. Your body urgently requires hydration, yet you instinctively, aggressively decline the resource to avoid the perceived sin of being a burden.
It is a devastatingly common reaction,
Yeah.
and it reveals everything about our internal frequency. We must apply the principle of non-compartmentalization, the ink in the water that we talked about, to this exact, seemingly trivial moment.
Right, because how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Precisely. If an individual's internal resistance to receiving is so overwhelmingly high that they cannot allow themselves to accept a solitary, freely offered drop of water when they are physically thirsty,
Then what happens?
then it is physically and energetically impossible for their field to accept the vast, roaring tide of their massive desired reality. They have built an invisible fortress against incoming energy.
That is a truly chilling thought. If I say no to the water out of some misplaced sense of politeness, am I essentially practicing the vibration of rejection? Am I training my receiver to block the signal?
You are absolutely training your energetic field to deflect incoming circulation. You are actively broadcasting a magnetic signal to the universe that receiving is an inconvenience, that your personal needs are an unacceptable burden to the collective, and that you require nothing.
And the universe listens.
The universe will flawlessly honor that command. It will cease bringing you opportunities, connections, and resources. A hidden feeling of unworthiness acts as an impenetrable, heavily reinforced ceiling over your entire existence.
An invisible ceiling.
The universe cannot and will not grant you what you fundamentally, magnetically believe you do not deserve. You can spend years writing down your grand goals. You can visualize immense success every morning. You can chant those affirmations until your voice is completely hoarse.
But if you feel unworthy,
If your core emotional frequency silently whispers, I am a burden, I am not worthy of this, you will unconsciously, automatically swat away every single blessing that attempts to enter your orbit.
man, it is like standing out in a massive, torrential downpour of absolute abundance. The sky has finally opened up, the rain is pouring down exactly as you begged for it to.
Yes.
But you stubbornly insist on holding up this tiny, ridiculous little paper cocktail umbrella over your head because you just don't want to inconvenience the storm by letting the water touch you.
That is exactly what it is.
It is absolute madness when you look at the mechanics of it clearly. We are literally shielding ourselves from the exact reality we have been desperately trying to manifest.
That tiny cocktail umbrella is the perfect visualization of the feeling of unworthiness. It seems small, it seems polite, it seems totally harmless, but if you hold it directly over your receiver, it effectively blocks out the entire sky.
It really does.
Recognizing these dual blockages, the gripping primal scarcity that paralyzes our ability to give, and the suffocating deep-seated guilt that forces us to deflect and refuse receiving, this is the ultimate diagnosis of the modern human condition.
So this is why we're stuck.
It is the exact architectural reason we find ourselves pushing against that exhausting invisible wall you described at the very beginning of our discussion.
Okay, so we have fully identified the disease. We have painstakingly mapped out the architectural mechanics of exactly why we are stuck. We understand that our physical reality is just a condensed mirror of our dominant frequency, that our emotional resonance is the heavy magnet pulling the strings.
Yes.
That our unhealed wounds bleed into every single corner of our lives,
Yeah.
and that we are violently disrupting the natural cycle by either hoarding out of ancient fear or deflecting out of misplaced guilt.
We have mapped the entire system.
So now we have to transition to the cure. We have to examine how to actually master the rules of this cosmic circulation. How do we put down the cocktail umbrella, shatter the ice, and finally unclog the pipes of our reality?
The cure requires a radical, uncompromising shift in our entire orientation toward existence. It requires us to evolve from being mere passive participants, just begging the universe for favors, to actively embodying the source itself.
Embodying the source.
Yes, the foundational absolute rule of reality, the mechanism that actually turns the radio dial, is this. Whatever specific energy or outcome it is you wish to receive from the universe, you must first actively become an abundant source of that exact energy in the physical world.
You have to become it first.
You must consciously step into the flow of circulation. You must give freely without condition, and you must receive freely without an ounce of guilt.
Become the source. I mean, that sounds incredibly powerful, but it also borders on the abstract. Let's break down the actual granular mechanics of what that looks like on, say, a random Tuesday afternoon.
Sure, let's make it practical.
If someone desires an overwhelming tide of compassion in their life, like they feel deeply isolated, they feel fiercely misunderstood by their peers, and they desperately want people to treat them with warmth and understanding, how do they practically become the source of compassion?
They must begin to emanate that exact frequency of compassion, mentally, emotionally, and physically, to absolutely everyone they encounter in their daily environment.
Even strangers.
Especially strangers. And you must recall our earlier examination of the illusion of separation. Treating others with genuine compassion is energetically and magnetically identical to treating yourself with compassion.
Because it's all the same water in the bottles.
Exactly. If you desire warmth, you must mentally bless the strangers you pass on the street. Instead of silently judging them or coldly ignoring them, you consciously send them a silent, heavy wave of goodwill. You must alter your dominant emotional frequency from a state of passive, hungry desire to a state of active, overflowing emanation.
Okay, I see the distinction here. Because the universe only magnifies what is already present in the field.
Exactly. The universal architecture does not respond to the frequency of want. The vibration of wanting something inherently implies that you do not currently possess it.
So wanting is lack.
Therefore, wanting is fundamentally a frequency of lack. If you constantly emit the desperate signal of, I want love, I want resources, I want success, the universe flawlessly magnifies that exact state of wanting.
And you just keep wanting.
And you remain trapped in a perpetual, agonizing state of yearning without ever actually acquiring the object of your desire. But when you give freely, when you emanate the energy, you demonstrate to the universe that you already possess an abundance of it.
Because you can't give what you don't have.
Precisely. The physical action of giving is actually secondary to the internal state of consciousness driving it. Giving from a state of joyous, uncalculated overflow signals to the heavy fabric of reality, I am full. I am incredibly abundant. I have such a vast magnitude of this energy that it is literally spilling over my edges.
And then reality reflects that back.
By demonstrating that you have, reality is forced by its own unbreakable physics of resonance to reflect vastly more of that abundance back to you.
I have to pause here, though.
Yeah.
Because there is a massive, deeply hidden trap in this exact step that I think an overwhelming majority of people fall into without even realizing it.
The hidden ledger.
Yes, the hidden ledger. I want you, the listener, to really deeply examine your own behavior for a moment. Think about your daily interactions. When you do a favor for a colleague, when you offer profound emotional support to your partner, or when you generously share a resource with a friend, are you truly giving from a place of joyous, unattached overflow?
Most people aren't.
Right. Or are you giving with a hidden ledger strictly maintained in the back of your mind? Are you secretly keeping a meticulous score of what you are now owed? Like, I gave them this energy, so now they are heavily obligated to return that energy to them.
It's transactional.
Completely. Because if you are keeping a ledger, if you are secretly tracking the debt, you aren't actually participating in the flow of giving it all, are you? You are just executing a calculated transaction completely born out of scarcity.
That distinction is the exact hinge upon which this entire mechanism turns. Giving with a hidden ledger is absolutely not an act of circulation. It is a desperate act of manipulation disguised as generosity.
Wow. Manipulation disguised as generosity.
It is the ancient survival instinct dressing up in polite clothing. When you keep score, your underlying emotional frequency, the massive magnetic field of your heart, is actively broadcasting intense anxiety about your return on investment.
Because you're afraid you won't get it back.
You are silently screaming to the universe, I am losing this vital resource unless they pay me back with interest. That intense frequency of fear completely and totally nullifies the outward signal of abundance. To truly align with the frictionless rhythm of the universe, the act of giving must be completely and utterly free of expectation.
A hidden ledger has to go.
The hidden ledger must be entirely burned to ash.
Burn the ledger. I love the finality of that. It is literally the only way to stop the ink of scarcity from bleeding into the act of generosity. And once we burn the ledger on the giving side, once we clear that blockage, we have to rigorously address the receiving side to complete the circuit.
We must.
We have to deliberately, consciously throw away that tiny cocktail umbrella.
We must systematically dismantle our resistance to receiving. Actively, consciously practicing the art of receiving freely is how the energy is allowed to flow uninterrupted through your system.
So what does that look like practically?
When someone offers you a genuine compliment, you do not instinctively deflect it by pointing out a flaw in yourself.
Well, this old shirt, I got it on sale. It's terrible.
Stop doing that. You do not diminish your light. You simply say thank you, and you intentionally allow the magnetic warmth of that compliment to fully enter and nourish your energetic field.
You actually absorb it.
When someone offers you that metaphorical glass of water, you take it with profound gratitude. By engaging in these small, deliberate acts of acceptance, you are actively tearing down the heavy ceiling of unworthiness.
You're opening the pipes.
You are signaling to the expansive universe that you are a gracious, capable host for abundance, and that massive amounts of energy can flow toward you without violently colliding against a wall of deeply ingrained guilt.
It all comes down to removing the artificial borders we have stubbornly built around ourselves, doesn't it? When we finally drop the hidden ledgers of what we fiercely believe we are owed, when we dissolve the suffocating guilt of what we are generously offered, and when we truly fundamentally realize that the person standing across from us is just another reflection of our own existence.
Another droplet in the same vast ocean.
Exactly. When we realize that, the agonizing friction of life completely disappears. We stop pushing our bruised shoulders against the invisible wall because we finally truly realize that the wall was constructed entirely out of our own internal resistance.
And this realization brings us to a profound, paradigm-shifting understanding of the ultimate human potential.
Where does this leave us, big picture?
For the passage of eras, humanity has largely viewed itself as a collection of mere fragile passengers on a chaotic ride, enduring the random, often cruel whims of an indifferent reality. We have comfortably settled into the identity of victims of circumstance.
It's easier to be a victim, honestly.
It is. But when you truly comprehend the alchemy of frequency, when you understand the immense magnetic gravity of the heart, and when you align yourself with the unyielding laws of circulation, you awaken to a staggering, undeniable truth.
Wait it.
We are not passive observers. We are the active, conscious architects of our entire experience.
We are not just participating in the physical reality, we are actively generating it, moment by moment. Every single feeling we choose to harbor, every resource we courageously release into the flow, and every gift we allow ourselves to accept without guilt is actively weaving the heavy fabric of our tomorrow.
By mastering this continuous, generous, entirely unbroken loop of giving and receiving, we elevate not just the circumstances of our own individual lives, but we raise the resonant frequency of the entire collective consciousness.
We heal the whole system.
We cease being blockages in the system, and we become conscious, brilliantly clear conduits for universal energy, allowing it to flow flawlessly through us and shape the world into something infinitely more abundant.
Which brings us perfectly full circle to exactly where we started our exploration today. If you are deeply exhausted from pushing against that invisible wall, if you are completely tired of the grinding and the stagnant outcomes, the answer is absolutely not to push harder.
Never push harder.
The answer is to critically examine your flow. So as we wrap up this transmission, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final lingering provocative question to just kind of ponder as you navigate the rest of your day.
It's a vital question.
If the surrounding universe is simply a flawless, unyielding mirror reflecting your deepest internal frequencies back to you, and if you can only ever receive what you are willing to let flow completely through you, what is the very first thing you need to unconditionally give away today in order to finally receive what you have been desperately waiting for?